Hello and welcome to A Sense of Centerville and Washington Township, your place for stories about ordinary and extraordinary residents and places in the Centerville and Washington Township area. I'm Susan from Centerville-Washington History, and I look forward to hearing your story. Today my guest is Sam McLain. Sam is a senior at Centerville High School and is the current student council president. He's a 3-time state qualifier in debate, attending Northwestern University in the fall, majoring in political science. In addition, Sam is the president of the Stage Club, the theater club for CHS, as well as a regular on the stage. He sings for FORTE, Centerville's premier Accapella group. As an Elk connector, he helps with freshman orientation and CHS acclimation. Through the Student-to-Student Suicide Prevention Network, Hope Squad, Sam contributes to the supportive environment at CHS. He is a commended National Merit Scholar and in the fall was selected by the student body as Homecoming King. Welcome, Sam. You've got quite a resume there.
Yeah, hi. Thank you once again for having me here. But yeah, looking back on my resume, a lot of the times it feels like, wow, I don't know how I managed to fit all of that in my schedule. People ask all the time, and the truth of the matter is I just kind of follow my schedule, and eventually it works out, you know?
Yeah, well, it's nice that you sound like you're ambitious, but also pretty laid back. Do I have that kind of accurately?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I have a lot of peers and such that really are driven by trying to build their resumes and everything for college, and if I'm totally honest, a lot of what I've done is I'm concerned about getting into my good schools. And, well, I ended up getting into Northwestern, which was my first choice, and I was super excited about that. But it never became a big thing for me about, like, oh, I have to be in the top 10 or I have to be the valedictorian. I have to make sure that I get a sports on my schedule or that I'm the president of all these different things. A lot of those just ended up being that I wanted to take a leadership position and learn and have those experiences. And just through my natural talents and experiences and skills that I've come to acquire over the years, that ended up being where I was, and it just kind of accumulated over time.
Oh, thanks for describing that. I think that's interesting. Not to go off of our schedule here, but I'm curious, why did you want leadership?
This is something I've talked with my parents a lot about. It's just the idea that I always kind of found myself in that position naturally. It came from very early on. I was super active in classrooms. I got a lot of comments from teachers being like, hey, we love Sam. He just needs to talk a little less. And he needs to ask fewer questions and such. And so that but my parents were really encouraging about wanting to make sure I was still getting a good education and getting my questions answered. And I was really thriving and helping myself. And so that kind of inevitably leads to me being in a position where I end up taking charge in certain situations because I see that something needs to be done, and I'm very proactive and extroverted when it comes to those sorts of things. So
no, that's great, and that says a lot about your parents that they knew how to raise you, probably because they have similar qualities that they can recognize in you and know how to help you in those areas.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to our questions that we'd already talked about. What are your thoughts about growing up in Centerville?
I mean, growing up in Centerville has been an absolutely amazing opportunity. We were just talking about it today, funny enough, in environmental science class, about how there's so many things that we have in Centerville that are very unusual for a suburb of our size and like our affluence, with how we have these parks, just incredible things, and like the business availability and walkable streets, and the business models and culture, sense of place in Centerville is just something that is an amazing opportunity. And especially when you look at our school programs and the different things that we have to offer, it's unending gratitude for the opportunity to be here in Centerville and experience it and live here.
Yeah, were you born here and grew up here?
I've always been here. I went to Epiphany Lutheran for preschool, and then I went to Primary Village South, and then Normandy, Watts Middle School, and finally here.
Oh,
or at
Centerville.
CHS,
Yeah. Well, that's exciting, and I like that you mentioned Epiphany Lutheran. It's such a great place. Yeah, some of my kids went there as well for that preschool program. Okay, so favorite things about Centerville and Washington Township, like places you hang out or things that you like or where you frequent?
Yes, especially since, and as silly as it sounds, I've moved, but I've moved from within Centerville. So I moved from the other side of Paragon to where I am now. And just that change in difference meant that I didn't have to cross Paragon. It's such a busy street to get to Stubbs Park. And now, very frequently throughout the summer, a lot of my friends, and even sometimes during the fall when it's nice or after school, we'll go out and have lunch or dinner, just food and something at Stubbs Park, throw a frisbee or football or something. Just that's been a big place I frequent. Also, Bill's Donuts is a really, really popular place that a lot of us attend. It's amazing to me still that we'll go at 1 a.m., maybe during a sleepover or something, and there's still a line out the door. I think that's just baffling. Graders, of course, right on top of the hill is an amazing place, but over the summer, now that Wits is here, there's been the big debate amongst the friend groups about whether Wits or Graders is to be the preferred spot for ice cream or custard and such. And recently I've been going to lunch on Flying Pizza in the Strip by Big Lots and Adventure Golf and such. Flying Pizza right there. Amazing pizza.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So you mentioned Stubbs Park. Let's go back there because they have this big remodel that's happening to that park. I'm curious what it will look like. Did you ever go sledding on the sled hill there?
we absolutely have. That's been, I mean, we just did that maybe a year ago or two, but we've been doing it for a long time. It's just a very, very perfect spot for sledding of the sort.
Yeah, and concerts in the summertime. Love Stubbs Park. Excited about what they will do to change that. And Graders is my place. I know my family likes Wits too. Bill's Donuts, definitely when my kids come home for college, that's a place that they like to go. Okay, so why do you think young voices have an important part in history?
Oh, man. I mean, they've always had an important part in history. You can look to founding fathers. Some of them were as young as like early 20s. I think the youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence, or maybe the Constitution. Got to check my
Your facts.
exact
It's
facts
okay.
on there.
Yeah.
But it's like 21. Joan of Arc, during
true.
those things, she was super young. Throughout history, we've always seen very young people be the active driving forces throughout history. And I think that's no different today. It's really easy for us to get caught up in the idea of I'm just a high schooler, I'm just a kid, I shouldn't be having these responsibilities, and a lot of people, adults who maybe don't understand that historical context will say the same thing and say, but you're just a kid, you don't have to have that importance and that influence yet, you don't understand what you're talking about. And I think now more than ever, kids are really well educated about what's going on in the world. Just with the access to the internet and social media, no different than the adults who are affected by the same content. We're really anxious to be active members of our community, making sure that we're contributing to, social projects and making sure that policies are followed and making sure that not only is there good representation from our government, but also the other community members around us are following and making sure that we live in a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said, and you've obviously been thinking about it a lot. The young people have the energy and also maybe not the discouragement that as you get older and you maybe fail at some things or things don't work out, then you kind of lose your drive a little bit. And so we need that young energy, that fresh perspective that I really think helps. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, one thing I didn't ask you about is debate club. It's obviously that you're well-spoken. How'd you get into debate?
Well, debate came as the natural consequence of
Talking
my
a lot.
interests and everything and
Yeah.
talking a lot, of course. When I was told that I could join a club and be argumentative and talk a lot for credit and put it on my resume and it looks good on a resume and everything, I was like,
Sign
I have
me
to,
up.
Absolutely. And I've gone through a couple different phases with debate. I was actually part of the very first group of middle schoolers who had a debate club. That was started by Mrs. Neidhard, who is a former teacher at Centerville High School. She still runs the current debate club, but she realized the importance of having middle schoolers start to be prepared before they come into the high school setting. And so I was part of that first, founding pioneer generation of middle schoolers who got the training before they came to the high school. I learned public forum debate then, which was you debate in a partnership. You and one other person are debating on the side of an issue, and then you're against another partnership. And that was an absolutely amazing experience, really taught me a lot about research and even more about speaking and also argumentation. The difference between just being a good speaker and actually having a sound argument that holds water really was important and made me start looking at things like political debates and everything that we see on the TV. Just like, wow, I would beat this guy in a debate round. He's dropping his flows, or he's messing up. He missed a point there and things like that. And that's definitely changed my perspective. But debate's always been, at least throughout all of high school for me, huge part of my experience. And it's definitely helped shape why I chose to major in political science.
Yeah, what do you see as your future?
That's still a tough question.
Yeah, we don't all know. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think my career ideas that I have in mind would be a political strategist for a campaign. I really enjoy the idea of modifying how a politician markets themselves and their policies to the people. I think right now we're seeing so much bad misinformation and really reactionary content in the media for advertisements that people are just getting sick of just like malicious attacks against opponents and this like he said, she said type of advertisement. And rather, people really want policies and advertisements and genuine representatives that apply to them. And I think I worry about being a politician myself because I know about the money and elbow rubbing that has to go with that, and I'm no fan of that. Mm-hmm. But I think being a political strategist for a campaign would certainly be helpful. I'd also love to go into education potentially. Once I go to Northwestern and I start taking some classes, I'll see if maybe I'd want to be a political science teacher of some sort, or even a professor if I went to get my doctorate. Or you could simply be a political analyst and, say, hey, is this a good policy? Is this something that's going to help the people? So there's options open. It's really about going to higher education right now and seeing what I have a passion for.
Yeah, and that will come as you take classes and see what feels good, what feels right, mm-hmm. what opportunities are available to you. Awesome. So let's turn our attention to the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic had a huge effect on many people of many different ages, but let's talk specifically about people your age, and then if you care to share anything specific about you, you're welcome to share that as well.
Gotcha. Kids my age were, of course, really significantly impacted by the pandemic. Just having that separation away from other people. I know as much as we like to complain about school and, I don't want to go to school today. I wish I could just stay in my pajamas. And then the moment that opportunity to stay home and stay in your pajamas came, it was a rude awakening for a lot of us. Even, of course, people who are extroverted like myself, who I know I'm a people person. I know I need and craved that social interaction during that time. Of course, we knew that it was going to be tough on us. But I think a lot of even my friends who would consider themselves more introverted or full introverted really struggled during the pandemic anyway, just because we as people are wired for those social connections, and just having that total disconnect from other people really hurt mental health overall. And that's easy enough to understand, but seeing it firsthand definitely, it makes you understand it on a deeper level, I suppose.
Yeah, that people who don't have deep connections or I think everyone struggled. Everyone struggled with mental health. But how do you see people bouncing back? Have you noticed improvement as that has changed?
Absolutely. I think especially right when we came back, and it's still certainly going on now, there is a really big passion for sporting events is a huge thing. People are desperate and ready and raring to go to social events and gatherings and everything else. School spirit has certainly seemed to be on an uptick, at least amongst the upper generations who got into Centerville, like the current seniors. I was a freshman when the pandemic hit, yeah. And especially amongst the seniors, we felt like we just missed out on so much time of getting to enjoy our school and go through that process. And now as seniors, we are realizing that, hey, man, we missed out on a lot of opportunities, and now we've got to kick it into high gear. So things like spirit activities have been really through the roof at Centerville, and I've been very thankful to see that. And in general, I think all of us are wanting to do more events where we engage and spend time even during the week, other than just the weekends with our friends. Is that maybe at the cost on occasion of a homework assignment or two? Yeah, probably. But we're realizing also that our mental health in terms of social dynamics and enjoying our own time as well as supporting each other is really important and has to be put into consideration right alongside things like our academics.
Yeah, because you burn out quick if you don't have that support mentally. So, yeah, we've talked a lot about that in our family too. Is grades are important, but mental health is required.
Absolutely.
So, for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit about volunteering. And first of all, why do you think it's important to volunteer, and what are your favorite ways to contribute to the community?
Well, I will say that volunteering on its own, I think, is one of the most important things. It comes back to the old idea of what you do when you're expected to do it isn't that important. It's what happens when nobody asks you to do it. What is your choice of action? And I think volunteering is exactly that. Nobody asked you to volunteer, or at least nobody was demanding that you volunteer and go to this activity or that you serve your community. But instead, you made that choice out of the own goodwill of your heart. And I think that's a super important thing for any individual to have. But also, volunteering, especially when it comes right back to your own community, is just invaluable because your community has given you the opportunities that you have. And I think it's only right that you also try to give those opportunities back into the community for those who come after you and those who are still here with you at the current moment.
Yeah, and I think volunteering always, whatever you put, whatever you put into an organization, you always get back. So specifically, let's talk a little bit about Spirit Chain, because that was a big contribution that you and many others made. And then also let's talk about Hope Squad. So those are the two that I'm most interested in. But you're welcome to talk about whatever.
Yeah. So Spirit Chain, and I've talked about this before, is probably the most gratifying, making me feel whole kind of experience I've had during my time in high school. And
let's talk what it is, because a lot of listeners might not even know what it is.
So Spirit Chain at the high school is a yearly competition that we have against Fairmont High School to raise as much money as possible for charity. And just this year, I believe we broke, over the last 2 decades or so, over $3 million raised for charity. Just this year alone, Centerville, as a school, raised around $66,000 for a various number of charities as well as scholarship opportunities to fund. We raised this money through fundraising events at the school. So we hosted a Powder Puff two-hand touch football game for kids to attend. We had what we called Spirit Fest, which was a miniature festival down near the football stadium at the high school, and all sorts of other activities. We had a taco dinner to raise money, and we also have kids run for Spirit Royalty, which is basically a competition to see whoever raises the most money gets to be crowned as the Spirit Royalty. And those kids, like individual groups, will raise $2,000 to $5,000. And I want to say perhaps a couple years back, we had one group raise $12,000 just on their own. It was absolutely incredible to see the effort that they put into raising money. And so I just thought Spirit Chain was such an amazing opportunity for us as high schoolers to get involved in supporting our community and also to get our community involved in supporting our community. We made sure to include tons of local businesses at our Spirit Fest, and we make sure to do a lot of local charities when we are donating. So we contributed to, this year at least, but we changed the charities that we donate to every year. The Battle Buddies Foundation, which helps veterans with PTSD by equipping them with a fully trained service dog to help with any episodes or emotional instability. We donated to House of Bread, which helps. It's a food pantry for the Dayton area, and they've been really struggling since the pandemic. And TJ's Place of Hope, which is a mental health location right on Franklin Street. They especially help teens in terms of mental health and also substance abuse recovery. And they've worked very closely with the high school, especially in the past year with Hope Squad, which is the next kind of thing that I've had the opportunity to be a part of. Yeah. But yeah, just working on Spirit Chain and getting to be part of the leadership on student council that organized those events just was so gratifying to see that we as high schoolers could make such a huge impact, especially when a lot of kids at Centerville and the greater Centerville community have a lot of privilege to be where we are, and the opportunity to give back to the community is just incredible. And I really hope to see in the coming years more and more engagement from both the high schooler as well as the community in making this, and maybe sticking it to Fairmont, because they tend to outdo us a little bit on the Spirit Chain. But I digress, and I'll talk about Hope
we
Squad.
can let's talk a little bit more about it. So how do you pick the charities, first of all?
So this year we had several people approach us. In typical years, we will look to different charities around the area. We, as the student council, generally it's the senior council who makes the final say, but all of the student council has input on it. And we'll just look to things that we find of importance. And sometimes they're not necessarily local charities, though we tend to do that. And it's whatever we feel is really important to us. That's why this year we wanted to certainly include TJ's Place of Hope, because of how important mental health is right now, and especially with all the work that they've been doing alongside of Hope Squad. We really wanted to make sure that they had support. We looked to House of Bread, specifically post-pandemic. They've been really financially struggling, both with donations and just like operations. And so we wanted to make sure that they received support. And we also had a Centerville resident was part of the Battle Buddies Foundation. And they reached out via a teacher who they are close friends with. They greatly support this whole system of trying to help veterans. You can ask Mr. Rogers at the high school, Archibald Rogers, because there's two, about that. And he introduced us to Kenny Bass, who's the guy who runs Battle Buddies Foundation. And he was super, super enthusiastic to see us as high schoolers caring about this issue, because we do know that it is a significant issue. We have so many members in Centerville who are veterans and who have struggled with these issues. We just thought it was something that's kind of gone unaddressed, especially in our long running of charities that we've donated to for Spirit Chain. We've donated to a lot of mental health things and medical treatment facilities and food pantries and everything. But specifically for veterans, it's something that we hadn't seen for a while, and we certainly wanted to look to that group who's in need of coverage and awareness.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think those are wonderful charities, and I love that students are the ones, choosing who the money goes to, and also funding, working on the funding. Those are great things, and hopefully we learn more about Spirit Chain in the future, and it keeps going, because you're a senior this year, so yes. The next people will have to move it on. What did you specifically do for Spirit Chain?
So as student council president, the big responsibility was to keep it all on track. So every single event that we attended, I was there. I was a supervising manager of some sorts, making sure that, okay, we need referees for the Powder Puff game. I was the main point of contact for all of the small businesses that we had through various events. We had an ice cream and popsicle stand for our tacos night, and so I was the main point of contact there. I had to coordinate with the guy, Mr. Barrett, who was providing our food for the tacos. For Spirit Fest, we had several food trucks there and various different businesses and tables that wanted to have a booth there so that they could sell their vendors, and then they would donate a portion of their proceeds back to the Spirit Chain, which is how we raised money out of that event. And so I really had to be the main point of contact for all those things. So if somebody had a concern and they brought it up to student council, it was always email Sam, here's his email, talk to him. And that felt very adult. That felt
it's super adult, yeah.
Very responsible, and I had to be on top of my emails, and it felt like a real job. And so that was a very exhilarating experience to feel like, wow, I've been given so much responsibility and, authority in this case. This is something that I have to take really seriously. And so making sure that everything ran smoothly was a huge, huge, huge priority for me.
Well, good for you, because that does sounds terrifying for me. But the experience that you've gotten will help you in any job that you have in the future. And that shows that you are developing those skills that you need to succeed in the future. So let's turn some attention to Hope Squad and what that is. Explain what that is and your involvement in it, and maybe how it's benefited.
So Hope Squad is the student-based support network that we've developed at the high school. Hope Squad as a concept has been implemented in a lot of schools all over the country, but a lot around here especially. I believe Springboro has a Hope Squad at this point, and perhaps Beaver Creek, and other schools are beginning to implement it. Again,
is this post-COVID?
Yes, especially post-COVID. There had been a couple of them before COVID, but especially post-COVID, the development and the awareness for why we may need a suicide prevention system amongst students became really important. In fact, it was specifically established after we had a student at the high school take his own life. It was a very, very sad thing that we had happen, and we just wanted to be very aware of the fact that this is something that students feel very passionate about, and we wanted to make sure that there was these systems and outlets and eyes and ears that the counselors need to reach out to people and make sure that they're equipped with the skills needed to intervene. So basically how it works is that we have certain trainings throughout the year in which we go over how we are supposed to intervene and look for the signs of maybe somebody who is considering suicide or simply having depression or anxious thoughts and all of those other things, and how we ought to support them, intervene, and make sure that we refer them to a counselor and make sure that they feel comfortable and safe throughout that entire process. A concern that many of us had at the start was that, we as students don't want to be the suicide intervention specialists because that's such a heavy burden to take. But ultimately, we become the eyes and ears for the adults who are equipped and trained to deal with that. And that was a really big relief for us as students, and also made us feel like we could contribute without taking on this, massive emotional responsibility of becoming the one who has to take on this huge role. And so it's been very successful so far.
So how many people are a part of Hope Squad?
So we have different representatives from every grade, and I want to say that the total number of Hope Squad members is about 60 per grade.
Wow.
Somewhere around there. So
A
including the freshmen, we're looking at 240 if I did my math right. But that may sound like a lot, and it certainly is a lot. But at a school of 2,800 some students, that is still not, well, it could be enough coverage, but it's certainly not a perfect blanketer by any means. And so every student who's a member of Hope Squad really has to make sure that we are being compassionate and empathetic and very aware of what's going on around us.
Yeah, and I love that you use those words, compassionate and empathetic. That's your age has learned so much more about those words and staying mentally healthy and helping other people, mostly because there's been so much that you've had to manage. So those are hopeful things for the future, and I love that it's called Hope Squad because it does bring hope to people who maybe are struggling, and everyone struggles at some time, but this is people that are at risk specifically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. One of the Centerville High School statements is elk pride never dies. First of all, do you think this is true, and what are the things in Centerville and Washington Township you are proud of?
Wow.
You like that question? It's a good question.
Yes. First, I certainly agree with the idea that elk pride never dies, especially because just talking to teachers, the amount of teachers that we have at the high school who graduated from Centerville High School and have come back to support their community, I mean, that alone can show you how passionate people are and how prideful people are of this Centerville community. the amount of people who will go off to college and then return to Centerville, even not as teachers necessarily, but just as tradesmen and accountants and all the other occupations throughout the entire community, really shows how true it is that even after high school, elk pride is not something that people really let fade. People really do care about this community in a really big way. And I also think you can see that through the things that we have an opportunity to participate in. And of course, we've already talked about it, but Spirit Chain, for example, is something that just is unfathomable to a lot of other schools. The idea that an entire community and student body would be so passionate about their school and their own community as to raise over $60,000 almost every single year. I just think that that's something that I'm really prideful of, is the fact that this community has pride in itself. And you can, as we've already talked about, there's so many opportunities that we have throughout all of Centerville, like with our parks districts and everything, just amazing things that you can go out and do and say, wow, I'm really proud of the fact that I live in a community that cares about the outdoors and having that natural place for people to live and breathe and have a good and fantastic experience. Also, our programs at the high school are fantastic on every single front. We have qualified for national level competitions in every single category, whether it be sports, the basketball team, the football team, lacrosse teams, golf teams, bowling teams, and every other sport that I am totally forgetting to mention right now. We have operated and performed at the highest level that we can, and that's something to be really prideful of. The arts, I'm incredibly prideful of at Centerville High School. Our theater program is worthy of envy. Our dance club, or our dance teams, are nationally competitive. Our jazz bands, our orchestras, our choirs, our Accapella groups, all of them are just premier levels of performance on every single way. And so, and if there's anything else that I didn't mention that kids participate in and that they compete in, Centerville probably ranks within like the top 10 at minimum. And so it's just amazing to see how wide Centerville can be. Like, we are not a sports school or an art school or a academic school. We excel everywhere. And I'm very prideful to be part of that school system.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you brought up arts, and since that's your little niche, let's talk about that. So your involvement in the arts, and start from how you got involved in singing and acting, because I think it's always interesting to see how people get into what they're passionate about.
So the earliest opportunity that I had to be in the arts and singing and theater specifically was actually at Epiphany Lutheran Church, where I started in preschool. They first had what was called, what was the name? Starfire Choir, I think it was. Okay. And it was just a little choir that they ran for a lot of the little kids, so they may sing at the Christmas services or the Easter services, and you'd practice like once a week, and you'd go in and you'd learn some basics about music and mostly just be told to not pick your nose and such. But ultimately, that opportunity to sing and enjoy music at such a young age, I want to say I was maybe 5, this was like preschool level, really kind of kickstarted that. And Epiphany, of course, also does a lot of theater of their own, which was the inevitable future for me. Once I joined Starfire Choir, I was really encouraged by the choir teacher at the time, Mrs. Reed, to join the theater. And so I started doing their Christmas plays, and then I did their summer plays, and that just really developed a passion for me for theater and the arts and performing. And so that led me to do all sorts of different community theaters around the Centerville and Dayton area. So I've participated with Dare to Defy, The Muse Machine, Human Race Theater Company, and others that I'm just not remembering at the moment. But ultimately, I've gotten so many experiences all the way down to the age of 5 to where I am now, where I've mainly been performing at the high school just because it's hard to fit anything else into my schedule with my other activities than to perform at the high school. But it's it's always been a part of my life. As soon as, I sang at a Christmas show for Christmas Mass.
Yeah, do you think this will be in your future, or is it done in high school? Or
Oh, I definitely think I'm going to continue to participate in the arts. A big reason why I chose Northwestern as my first choice and to apply early decision was their passion for the arts and how much support is around it. Whenever I was looking at colleges in different locations, I wanted to make sure wherever I was going allowed for intramural participation in the arts, whether that be in Accapella or theater or improv or classical singing or any other sort of performing arts. I wanted to make sure that I could still participate in that and I could feel not ostracized and like I had to go out of my way to do that, but that was actively encouraged in the campus atmosphere. And that's exactly what Northwestern has, and I'm excited to continue to pursue the arts
even though
college.
It's not major.
Yes,
Yeah.
it will not be a major because I'm not looking at the performing arts for a career, but it is certainly something that I will always do wherever I am for my community. I would love to continue to participate in community theater and musical opportunities for the rest of my life.
Right, because it's pleasure. It brings
Absolutely.
you happiness.
It is my most passionate, favorite hobby.
Yeah. I love it too. I love to sing. I'm not so good at acting, but I have done a little bit of it. So what's next for Centerville Theater or FORTE or whatever? What's next? What's coming up that you're excited about?
So the biggest things that we currently have coming up are state qualifiers for debate. That's going to be in February. It's going to be pretty competitive this year because just how the Ohio Speech Debate Association has shifted some of the rules. The qualifying is going to be a lot tougher. Out of our greater Miami Valley region, only 5 can qualify when you have probably at least 30 kids who are going to go for our region and our category. So it's going to be tough stuff. But I'm very excited for that. Looking to Accapella and theater. I'm currently not participating in Radium Girls with the theater because I wanted to focus down a lot more on debate for this season, just because I had kind of had to miss it in certain past seasons due to theater, and I wanted to give a little bit of that trade-off. But that's coming up in January, so those will be shows that people can go see for Radium Girls. Amazing play that I recommend that everyone goes see. And for FORTE Accapella, we have a Accapella festival coming up in February as well, called Nordonia, Nordonia Accafest. So we will be going to that and getting to perform. And also in March, over spring break, we will be traveling to Florida for the National Accapella Convention, or NAC, and we will get to perform there in Orlando for a great big group of acapella kids from all across the country. So we're super excited for that.
You've got a lot going on. It's
Oh, yeah.
exhausting, but it's great. It's great. It's your senior year, getting involved in a lot of things, and there's a lot of exciting things coming up. So anything else that you wanted to discuss that we didn't get to?
Not that I can think of.
I think we covered a lot of topics.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I feel like I know more about you now, but you're very impressive, and I appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit about. I think that our listeners will enjoy your perspective, your youthful perspective, and also get caught up on what's going on at Centerville. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you once again for inviting me.
Absolutely. So thank you to MVCC for helping to produce this podcast, and to my guest, Sam McLain. If you have an interesting story about Centerville or Washington Township, please contact Centerville-Washington History. Please also come visit our museums in Uptown Centerville, Tuesday through Friday, 12 o'clock to 4 p.m. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and look for upcoming events posted on our website at centervillewashingtonhistory.org. Thank you, and goodbye.